Hey everybody, my name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here today. Steve and the people he revolves around have been very seriously working toward carrying a message of experience, strength, and hope as it's as it's the foundations of which come from the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm pretty much on the same page. I'm gonna tell my story, but I want you to know that Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship, the 12 steps, the recovery program, and the service opportunities are the perfect thing for my alcoholism. And I didn't think that when I showed up. I actually thought, this might be an overreaction, or I don't really understand what's going on here, or this is a lot of psychobabble, or who are these people? This isn't going to be necessary for me. I get stuff pretty quickly. This is kind of a remedial experience, sitting in this beginner's meeting. And I had a lot of old ideas, and I had a lot of prejudice, and I had I had a lot of resistance to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know I'm not the only person. But I want to tell you that many years down the road now, I've definitely come to the conclusion that Alcoholics Anonymous, the three legacies of Alcoholics Anonymous, are perfect, the perfect approach for a solution to my alcoholism. So anyway, I'm gonna start in the beginning. I grew up in a little town. It was a sleepy little bedroom community. I had mother, father, brother, sister. A little Cape Cod house on a dead end street. Everything really seemed fine. Christmas was special, and whenever I wanted a bike or something, I would get one. And life was pretty good. Life was I didn't have any challenges that I can think of. We I'm plodding along as a kid, and there's something that I feel from my very earliest memories. There's something that I felt within me, kind of an emotional condition that felt off. I didn't feel comfortable doing a lot of things, being a lot of places, talking to people, doing activities, sports, anything. Many things made me feel emotionally uncomfortable. And I was looking around at the other kids, and they're dumb. They're just, having fun. They don't have a care in the world. So I really thought that there was something, maybe different or wrong with me. And it wasn't like I would share that with anybody. I don't even think they had, childhood counseling, back then. I'm talking about the 60s. I don't think there was anything like that. So you just shut up and you dealt with it, right? So I'm plodding along. I'll tell you one experience I had. It was something that is ingrained in my memory to this day. My mother comes into my little first story bedroom there. My bedroom was right off the kitchen. And she says, get yourself ready. Today's your first day at kindergarten. And I had heard about this kindergarten stuff. The older kids talked about it. I knew it was probably coming. But, and I knew I needed to get ready. So I get ready, and we jump in a car. Now, this is how long ago this was. It was a Packard Clipper. That's what my mother was driving. It looked like a 56 Chevy, those Packard Clippers. Anyway, I get in the Packard, we drive across town, and she opens up the passenger door and points to the classroom and says, "There's your classroom. I'll, come pick you up later today." And she closes the door and she drives away. And I'm standing up on this hill, and I'm looking down at the classroom, right? And there's kids down there already having fun. They're playing kickball and playing tag, doing what 5-year-olds do. And I'm standing up on the hill thinking, oh my God, who came up with this kindergarten thing? This isn't going to work for me. I mean, I had anxiety like you wouldn't believe. And I'm standing up there on the hill, look at, people start looking up at me. I feel like a dick, just standing up there on the hill. And finally, I realized, I got to go down. I have two options: run home, and say I'm not doing it. And I knew that wasn't going to go very well, right? So I didn't do that. I went down and I acted as if I wasn't completely freaked out with this kindergarten crap. Now, I believe that this is the first experience I had that I can call the root of my problem, the root of my alcoholism. It manifested right there at 5 years old. Why would I say that? I was 8 years away from taking my first drink. Why would I say that was my alcoholism? I would say that was my alcoholism because you know what would have made that whole situation a whole lot easier? A half a pint of whiskey. You give me a half a pint of whiskey and I'd have run down there. I'd have been kickballing and I'd have been tagging. I'd have been the kindergarten kid. You know what I mean? Because alcohol did something for me. It treated the thing that was wrong with me was this emotional condition, this toxic experience of self-consciousness that I had, right? And that's what I believe alcoholism is. Yeah, we drink, we drink ourselves to death sometimes. We're powerless over it at certain times in our alcoholism. But that's not the problem. The problem is sobriety. Sobriety is my problem. I have a toxic experience of self-consciousness. Now I start to go through school. And there are things that I can do that I'm all right with. There's things I can't do. Do not ask me to get up in front of the class and give an oral report. You know what I mean? Do not ask me to be in the play. Like there's like all these things that were absolutely off limits for me because they were just, my experience of self-consciousness would not allow me to be in front of something like that, right? So let's move forward to like I'm 13 years old. I'm 13 years old, and a couple of my buddies and I decide we're going to cut school. We're going to go back to my house and we're going to get drunk. This is something the older kids were doing. It seemed like it was going to be a cool thing. I was starting to get into trouble around that period of time anyway. So that's what we did. We cut school. We went back to my house and I blew the dust off a bottle of Four Roses whiskey that had been like a Christmas present to my father 10 years before. So, right. Blew the dust off of it, poured out 3 big water glasses, and we started about the business of getting drunk. Now what I think is just as important is what happened to me is what happened to these 2 other guys. Now, understand, these 2 other guys never became alcoholic. They never became even problem drinkers, to my knowledge. What they did was they drank about 2/3 of the glass of whiskey, and they had enough. They pushed the glass away, and that was it. They weren't going to drink anymore, which is a strange reaction. For people like us, we see that happening, and it just seems like a strange reaction. What happened to me was the phenomenon of craving hit me right there at 13 years old. I drank my glass, I drank the rest of their glass, I tried to finish off the rest of the bottle, and I got blackout drunk. I came to in a field later, not knowing how I had got there. I staggered back to the house, vomiting the whole way. I walked into the house, I had trashed the house, in some drunken maniacal tear. And then I got about the business of being ill for 2 days. Now I was ill, I was as ill can be. I couldn't get off the horizontal plane for like 2 days, and I'd vomit up anything that went down. I drank myself sick. And the strange thing about that whole experience was this. The whole time I'm lying there sicker than a dog, I'm saying to myself, I'm going to do this a lot. Now, does that make any sense at all? Does that make any sense at all? I just drank something that made me deathly ill. It poisoned me, you know. Why in the world would I drink, you know, something again that made me that sick? Well, it was because it was the absolute antidote to that scared kindergartner. It was the absolute antidote. I drank that booze, and when I started to feel the intoxication washing over me, I felt larger than life. I felt like this is the coolest place. These are the coolest people. We're doing the coolest thing. This is so great. This is great. You know, we'll do this again tomorrow. I mean, what washed over me was an absolute absence of self-centered fear or self-consciousness. It was the treatment for that toxic self-consciousness. And I started getting involved with booze right away. Now, I wouldn't drink Four Roses whiskey anymore, but I knew that there was other kinds of alcohol. So almost immediately, I started getting involved in the types of alcohol that 13-year-olds were drinking back then. There was a company with a fine line of products that many of us got involved with, the Boone's Farm Company. Okay, so we would drink Boone's Farm apple wine or Strawberry Hill. I would drink blackberry brandy or Southern Comfort, you know. And finally, I got through all those kids' drinks, you know, with all the sugar, and I started to drink beer. So by the time I was 15, you know, I was a beer drinker. By the time I was 17, I was a hard liquor drinker. You know, the progression of alcoholism just moves on with you, and I started to become very dependent on alcohol. Maybe I wasn't an alcoholic yet, but if I was going to go out to a party, I would drink to go drinking. If I was going to go to a concert, I would drink to go to the concert. You know, what if I was going to go on a date? I was going to have a six-pack before I went on the date. I found confidence in alcohol. I found an ease and a comfort in alcohol. It made me feel like I really was supposed to be, you know, not this repressed, overly anxious, self-conscious individual. All of a sudden, I'm like Super Chris, you know, and I start using that booze like crazy. Now I start getting in trouble. By the time I'm 18, I've been in so much trouble for drinking. I've had DUIs. I've crashed a bunch of cars. You know, I've come to in very strange places. I've had a lot of people really mad at me for something. You know, I'd like pull into their driveway and park on their cat or something, you know, and or I'd pass out in their living room and I'd yank down, the window, all the window curtains and everything because I needed a blanket. You know, I mean, I do crazy stuff like that, and people would be really mad at me, and so I started to try to manage my drinking. I didn't try to quit. I tried to manage it. And how I tried to do that was with other substances. You know, I first started to try to manage it with pot, with marijuana. Then I tried to manage it with cocaine. Then I tried to manage it with dope. Then I tried to manage it with speed. Then I tried to manage it with LSD. Then I'm trying all these different things, all these different combinations, because it's unacceptable to me to not have the ease and the comfort that alcohol provides me. It's unacceptable. But it's also unacceptable to be passed out in the front yard at like 8 o'clock at night at some party. So I'm trying to manage this stuff, and sometimes it goes okay, and sometimes it doesn't. Now, I drank for 19 years before I was finally able to get released from alcohol. And the whole time, if you had a graph, I could show you the decline of my quality of life. I could show you the decline of my friendships. I could show you the decline of the trust people had in me. I could show you the decline of my physical health. Everything was going downhill because I was drinking more and more and more, because alcoholism is a progressively fatal illness. And and it got finally, I tried to go to college. I tried a whole bunch of stuff, but because of the way I drank, my life looked very, very unmanageable, and it looked undisciplined. And it wasn't like I couldn't manage, or I couldn't, I didn't have any discipline. It's that alcoholism, ruins those two things because it gets in their way. So, I come to an Alcoholics Anonymous. I come to an AA. I did some treatment. I did some IOP. I did this. I did that. The other thing, and this one drunk I had, was so concerning to me that I had a level of willingness that I hadn't had before, and I went back into Alcoholics Anonymous thinking this probably isn't going to work, but it's the only thing that's going to save my life. I am going to end up dead, but probably I'm going to end up dead after I do something really horrible, like kill somebody by accident or something. I mean, you want to talk about misadventure, and man, I was that guy. So anyway, I show up in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now this was the roaring 80s. Okay. The fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous back then was like the Wild West. There was very little big book recovery, if any. There was very little recovery at all. There was sobriety, and people didn't know. They just didn't know that recovery was available. Because they got sober and they thought, listen, it's just about staying sober. It's just about not taking a drink a day at a time. It's just about, going to meetings and not drinking, so that's the fellowship that I showed up in. And there was a personal problem that I had with that. And that is I'm what's known in the book Alcoholics Anonymous as a real alcoholic. Now, what's a real alcoholic? The best way I can describe it, it's not meant as an insult. It's not meant to be, that I'm better than anybody else in AA. It's just the big book describes a real alcoholic as someone having the phenomenon of craving, which is when I take a drink, the first drink wants the second insists on the third demands the fourth. And I want the 47th drink more than I wanted the 46th drink. The more alcohol in my body, the more my body cries out for alcohol. That's the phenomenon of craving. The other thing is the obsession of the mind. And the obsession of the mind is there's nothing I can do to stop drinking on my own power. There's nothing. I am powerless over whether alcohol goes back in my body or not. I can try, I can swear off, I can go to treatment, I can sign the Bible, I can pledge in blood that I'll never drink again. And none of that means anything because I'm not in charge of whether I drink again or not, because I'm powerless over alcohol. You know what I mean? So that's what a real alcoholic is. So I'd been trying to quit drinking for years before I showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous this time. That's why I didn't think AA was going to work. So I'm in this fellowship and I'm going to like 12 meetings a week. I mean, I am going to, and I'm doing what they asked me to do. I'm a treasurer over here. I'm a secretary over there. I'm running a beginners meeting. I'm doing all this crazy stuff. I'm bringing people to the meeting. I'm filling up my car with newcomers. I'm taking people to the treatment centers. I'm doing the taxi service to the detoxes for people. I am busy with Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I didn't understand was none of that stuff is a program. Okay. And if I'm a real alcoholic, I'm going to die if I don't have a program. It doesn't matter how active I am. Now, most of the people that were in the meetings that I was in who were okay staying sober weren't real alcoholics because they would have been a mess if they were. They would have been like me. I was like a psychotic. I was psychotic just being sober. I was a lunatic. And I had to not let you know that. I had to just shut my mouth. Listen, I knew how to act like I'm sane. That was a skill set I had, but the voices in my head and the perspective I had and the resentments and the self-centered fear and everything, I was absolutely a lunatic, being sober, going to 12 meetings a week, doing all kinds of service. Why? Because I'm what the book describes as a real alcoholic who needs to get in touch with a power greater than himself, that can do for him what he cannot do for himself. And there's a process for that. It doesn't just happen because you're going to meetings. So how did I find out all this stuff? Well, I had made a friend. His name was Radio Shack Mike, right? And what a lunatic this was. Remember, this is like the late 80s, the early 90s. Radio Shack Mike wasn't even an alcoholic. Now, back then, before 1993, there were treatment centers everywhere in the United States because there had been parity legislation that had been passed that really had teeth. So what that meant was, if someone raised their hand and said, "I want 28 days worth of treatment," you would get it. Blue Cross and Blue Shield would pay for it. All the insurance companies would pay for it because they had to, because there was legislation saying that you had to. So treatment centers were everywhere. Managed care came in 93, and we lost 9 out of 10 beds in the United States for alcoholism and drug addiction treatment, because managed care, changed all the rules. But anyway, what had happened during that period of time is a lot of people ended up in treatment, and a lot of people were told they were alcoholic, and they weren't. You know what I mean? So this Radio Shack Mike was not an alcoholic. He was honest with me once. He said, "Chris, I tried alcohol like 3 times. I'm in here because I got busted with an 8-ball. And my lawyer told me I needed to go to AA and treatment and to stay out of jail. So he's my friend. And the thing about Radio Shack Mike was, he was sober for 5 minutes and he was already happy. Big smile on his face. Can't believe how great life is. Me, I want to kill people, sitting there sober, right? Now, I didn't know he wasn't an alcoholic, and I was. I didn't know that yet. I didn't have the information yet. But what he did for me was he gave me a set of 8 90-minute tapes. And he said, "I didn't care for these guys too much, but I think you might like them." And what it was a Joe and Charlie Big Book workshop. They went around in the 80s and they did a whole bunch of workshops, and they really changed. They really started this renaissance to get back to basics, this renaissance to get back to the information in the book Alcoholics Anonymous and use it as a text for recovery. They were instrumental in carrying that message around the country. And I listened to those tapes, and immediately I'm pissed. I'm pissed because that's not how we do it in New Jersey. Maybe in Arkansas, you do all this inventory and you go out and you make amends and you pray and you meditate, you do all this stuff, but in New Jersey, we share. We go to meetings and we share, So I wasn't real happy with it, but a number of things happened that put me in the barrel. And when I separate from alcohol, how alcoholism hits me is with that toxic experience of self-consciousness. And what that means is there's going to be manifestations of selfishness and self-centeredness that are going to make my life untenable. It's going to be resentment. It's going to be self-centered fear. It's going to be shame. It's going to be depression. It's going to be anxiety. It's my illness now is emotional. Because I'm sober and I have no anesthesia for what's wrong with me. So I listened to these tapes, and it kind of haunted me. The information in these tapes haunted me. And what I did was, after I got put in the barrel, there was something in the back of my mind that said, "Listen, take those tapes back out and listen. Do it as a piece of work. Do this as a piece of work." So it's like 1991. I take the tapes out, I blow the dust off of the big book that I got in treatment. I get myself a notebook and a pen, and I start listening to the tapes, and I start going through the steps, going through the steps, listening to Joe and Charlie tapes. Not the most ideal way to go through steps, I would say, today. But there were no experienced sponsors in my area with the steps. Didn't exist. That's not what was going on in the 80s. So I went through the steps, Joe and Charlie-esque, and some remarkable things started to happen to me. I believe today that those exercises started a healing process within my spirit. The steps are designed to take you from an experience of self-consciousness to an experience of God consciousness, and it's a journey. Each specific step is a building block, in that movement toward being in the realm of the spirit. Now, I didn't know any of this. I just thought, I'm going to try the steps because, I'm going to end up drunk or killing myself. This isn't working. So what happened was I got involved in the step work. Now, I was sponsoring people because as I'm moving through the steps, I'm starting, my sharing is different. It sounds, it sounds more like I know what I'm talking about. It sounds more, I just sound better. I sound like I'm getting better. So people are starting to ask me to sponsor them. And I'm continuing to sponsor the way I was sponsored. Now, back in the 80s, a good sponsor was somebody who just told you that they wanted you to be consistent with meeting attendance. A really good sponsor would say, I want you consistent with meeting attendance, and I want you to take a coffee commitment. That was like a really good sponsor. So I started sponsoring that way. And all these guys are drinking on me. Like most of them are drinking on me. They're making me look bad. So I've just gone through these 12 steps. So what I decided to do intuitively, one of the promises is you'll intuitively know how to handle lunatics, that used to baffle you. And so I started to bring them over to my house, and we would go. So I did this with every single person. We would go through the big book, line by line, instruction by instruction. Okay, here's an instruction. It says, put this down in black and white, and I would do it with them because I didn't want them to think I was just being the boss. And so in the early years, I had done a massive amount of step work because I was helping people do step work. I was showing them how to do it, and we were both doing it. So what I learned from this experience is there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to make it through the 12 steps with you if you're, sponsoring them, or you're their spiritual advisor and you're trying to get them through the steps. There's going to be a number of people who just, they balk. They lose momentum, they disappear, they slither off like greased weasels. And there's a guy in the meeting who all he wants me to do is be the cookie guy. I'm going with the cookie guy. So there's a bunch of people who didn't make it through the steps with me, but there's a bunch of people who did. I know where every single one of them is. To this day. This is 30 years ago. I know where every single one of them is to this day. They're still sober. They're living their best life. They're being helpful to other people. It's a way of life for them. They did their amends. They put a prayer and meditation discipline together that they don't miss. They carry the message to other alcoholics. It's not that complicated. So and the people who didn't, the people who, who kind of lost traction somewhere in step 5, 9, 11, 12, I don't know where any of them are. I don't see them in AA anymore. Now they may have been real alcoholics, and if so, they're dead now, but they may not have been alcoholic, and they may have come to the conclusion that this is an overreaction to a problem that, I don't have to work this hard to solve. And they may have been right. You know what I mean? I just know that without this awakened spirit that the 12-step process has offered me, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be talking to you today. I've got a chronic, critical case of alcoholism. You know, I see traces of it today. You know, I'm a recovered alcoholic, but there's traces of that alcoholism that pop up and lead me to believe that it's true what it says in the book. If I rest on my laurels, you know, if I slack off on living a spiritual life based on the recovery principles in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm headed for trouble. You know, I'm headed for trouble. Listen, guys, I had a sponsor. He was 10 years sober when he first started sponsoring me. And he called me up about a year and a half ago and he said, Chris, I got to tell you something. I'm just coming back from a relapse. He had 40 years sober and he drank. You know, listen, none of us are safe. You know, I mean, this is not a given. There's participation. There's consistent participation that's going to be necessary if we're a real alcoholic. You know, it's going to be necessary. And you know, that's what I've seen. You know, what are some of the things that are going on in my life today? I just got asked to be a board member of like the 5th freaking place that you know, I'm a board member of a recovery house community and an IOP now. Board member of the NCADD, board member of Community in Crisis. I was head of the board of Take 12 Recovery Radio for a while. I mean, I could go on and on and on. My service life is not just Alcoholics Anonymous anymore. It's different things. There's been an organic growth in my service life, and I find that that I am helpful to a lot of people today. For one reason or another, my phone number has gone around for years as somebody who can help navigate people to a detox if they need to go to a treatment center, if they need to go to a recovery community, if they need that extra help. And at least 2 or 3 times a month, the phone is ringing over here and I'm helping to navigate people to the most appropriate treatment center. You know what really is terrible about how we're treated. We have an illness. The American Medical Association says we have a disease. Well, you know, I got to tell you, the way we're treated and the things that go on when we look for help out there, it's unbelievable. All the online stuff, like if you type in alcoholism recovery help or something, there's people that pay for those ads that want to just drag you into their treatment center and just scrape your insurance card clean. And it's like a revolving, you know, so like 9 out of 10 of these treatment centers are just revolving doors that scrape your insurance card clean. You know, they're not helpful really at all. All they do is put you in mothballs for 28 days. But there are some really good ones out there, some really driven, you know, mission driven places. And for one reason or another, you know, I know where some of those are, you know, so I've done that. So that's my service life. So my recovery life, where am I with that? Well, for many, many years, I would go through the whole friggin' 12 steps on an annual or a semi-annual basis. You know, it says that in the 12 steps. Many of us go in for an annual or a semi-annual house cleaning. Well, I did that for many, many years. It's been a while since I've started at step 1 and gone all the way through. But what I've been doing in the last several years is I want to see how deep steps 10 and 11 are. I want to see where the end of the road with steps 10 and 11 are. And I have not found it. I'm finding that those steps are 1,000 miles deep. And I come to a new experience. I come to a new experience by practicing the principles that are in steps 10 and 11. And here's what I can tell you about what's happened with me today because of those practices. This year was better than last year. Last year was better than the year before. The year before was better than the year before that. You know, so So my quality of life, my internal quality of life is getting better every single year. And why would I want to interrupt that, by resting on my laurels? So I haven't. I've been pretty consistent with this stuff. Now, I'm not talking about external. A lot of times we judge the quality of our life by externals. What kind of house we have, what kind of car we drive, who are we dating, and all that stuff is external. And I've found no one who's an alcoholic who's ever gonna be satisfied with any of that stuff. Okay, you get $5 million, you want 10. You get a 10,000 square foot house, you want a 20,000 square. It just, that's not how it goes. So quality of life is internal. It's how do I feel about myself? What kind of a perspective do I have? How comfortable am I, in the role that I play in my community, in my marriage, in all those things? What kind of a role do I play? Am I satisfied with everything? Am I satisfied? Now, I steal this all the time. My friend Steve L. from Nashville told this story, and I love it. I love it, and I've stolen it 100 times. This is the story. It's a beginners meeting, and people come in there and they share their problems with sobriety. It's what you do in a beginners meeting, right? There's this one guy who comes in, and he's like, "Oh my God, man, you guys been telling me the whole time it's going to get better. Well, let me tell you, my girlfriend just broke up with me. I just lost my job. My parents are kicking me out. The police want me. I got warrants for my arrest. You guys tell me it gets better. You tell me it gets better. I want to know. I want to know right now, when the hell does it get better?" And like tons of people raise their hand. And they share their own personal experience. Listen, it took a while. Da 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 da. And at the end of the meeting, this grizzly old timer raises his hand, right? He's got a million years sober. He raises his hand. He goes, "Kid, it gets better when it's okay the way it is." Right? So I gotta tell you, it's okay the way it is with me. Now that's my recovery life. I want to share what my fellowship life is like today. Now, I have kind of an unusual experience, right? I get an opportunity to share, like I'm doing right now on Zoom, several times a week, right? But I've made an effort over the last year and a half or so to get back to some real in-person stuff. So about once a month, I get on a plane and I go to a convention or a roundup or a workshop or something somewhere in the Eastern Hemisphere. And I do that, and I bump into people that I know. I've been doing this long enough that if I go somewhere like that, I'll have friends there. I've made a lot of friends over the years. So I'm doing that, but grassroots. There's a men's meeting, and there's a men's meeting about 10 miles from my house, and it's out in the country. I am talking. This meeting is out in the country, okay, and it's a 9 o'clock Sunday morning men's meeting, and it is not what you would consider a big book meeting or a literature-based meeting. It is a group of about 30 to 40 guys who are talking about their sobriety and talking about their recovery in an unbelievably authentic way, in a really authentic way. The honesty in this group is unbelievable. It blows my hair back every time. And that's my home group. And you know what? I'm an AA member in that home group. I do not want to be, the elder statesman or the bleeding deacon. I want to be an AA member in an AA group. And that's where I go and I do that. Now, there's still a bunch of meetings in this area that I get an opportunity to play a role in. I'll get asked to speak, or I'll just go there. It's a small little big book meeting right up the street from my house with like 6 guys. And I'm doing all of that. And within this fellowship, I'm sponsoring a bunch of people. it's, you know, I'm always thinking, oh my God, this is unmanageable. I got too many guys, but that's never the case. It's never the case. I've always got time. I've always got room, you know, so I probably sponsor 30 guys. Okay. And Sunday is the day that I want, if they're going to do a check-in call, like just check it in, you know, do it on Sunday, please. You know, don't do it while I'm at work. You know, you're gonna just check in. You know, I'm in a meeting in work or something. Do it on Sundays. But if there's a problem, if there's something you really need to talk to me about, I am available. I'm available, you know, 24/7. But let me be very specific with you about these particular sponsees. If I haven't taken them through the steps, somebody else has before they become my sponsee. So they're not calling me up whining about some self-centered crap. You know what I mean? Oh my God. You know, what they're doing is they're calling me up and it's questions about how do I work with this guy, or I'm thinking of moving, you know, to California. I mean, it's like it's real pieces of business. It's not, you know, it's not them expecting me to help them manage a life that we've all admitted is unmanageable. You know, I'm not going to raise you up. But what I will do is, you know, walk right beside you, you know, I'll trudge the road of happy destiny right beside you. But you better have done your step work, or else you're wasting not only my time, you're wasting your own time. You know, I'm not a therapist. You know, I'm not a life coach. You know what I mean? But I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you if you're doing what, you know, what we're supposed to be doing, which is living life along spiritual lines. You know, God bless you, you know, if you do that. Now, what is my relationship like with my creator? I want to talk about that for a little bit. Now, one of the things that really screwed me up in the early days is the old ideas I brought to the concept of God and spirituality. All right. I knew what you meant. When you say God, I know what you mean, but I didn't know what you mean. Because when you said God, I thought you meant something that you didn't mean. I had no open mind on this stuff. Now organically, within the fellowship and the recovery program, I believe organically we're moved towards spiritual growth. You know, whether we pay attention and grow spiritually is really kind of up to us, but we're moved in that direction. And over the course of time, a lot of things have changed as far as my concept of the divine, as my experience of the divine. Now, what I believe step 3 lays out the problem and step 11 lays out the solution. What do I mean by that? All right. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that is the root of my trouble. Remember I said toxic experience of self-consciousness? You know, selfishness, self-centeredness, that's the problem. It's not whiskey. It's not drinking. Selfishness and self-centeredness. Sorry. I know that's inconvenient. But the steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, what they're meant to do is to move us toward the consciousness of the presence of God, toward a relationship and a unity with the divine. You know, so what, you know, what does that mean? What am I talking about when I talk about this experience? I can tell you that there's been a couple of times in my life where someone has shared something with me and it's been absolutely pivotal to my spiritual growth. And one of them was from 2000 to 2002, I got an opportunity to go through the steps with a hero of mine, somebody that I've been listening to for years. His name was Joe Hawk from Santa Monica, California. And he personally took me through the steps from 2000 to 2002, Joe Hawk style, which was really different, but very thorough. He was telling me a story one time. He went down to Australia. He was doing a workshop in Australia. And somebody that was at that workshop said, hey, you know, there's a really great speaker in town tonight. You know, he's he's from Dharamsala, India. He's the Dalai Lama's principal tutor. Let's go hear it. Rinpoche, so-and-so. Let's go hear him talk. So Joe said, yeah, man, I'm all about that. I love Tibetan Buddhism. Let's go. So Joe gets there early. He sits in the front row. Now picture an auditorium that holds about 4,000 people and it fills up. And this guy comes out, sits in a lotus position on a pillow and is quiet for about 5 minutes, doesn't say a word. The whole audience is like quieting down, to wait for him to talk. And finally, when he speaks, he says this: there is no God. And everybody gets uncomfortable, because he doesn't say another thing for another 5 minutes. Everybody's like kind of looking around. He speaks again. He goes, there is no God, even louder this time, right? Now people are really, they're fidgeting in their chairs. They came all this way and paid like $100 to hear about, spirituality. And, what's going on? Another 5 minutes goes by. It's dead quiet. And this is what he says. He goes, there's no God. There is only godliness. And Joe said his head exploded. His head exploded. Like I have been defining God in the image of man this whole time, right? Now, whether it's Jesus or whether it's God up on the clouds with the flowing white robes, right? What I experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is neither of those things. I experience the power of God. I experience godliness. And my concept changed. Now, the cool thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is the barn door is way open. You get to start where you are, and you get to build this relationship and this perspective on what God is to you, what God means to you, what kind of a relationship do you have. We do not tell you. Now, I was confirmed as a Methodist when I was 11 years old, right? They sent me to Sunday school and all this. And at the end, there was this whole list of stuff. If you believe all this stuff, the Trinity, you believe all this stuff, do you believe all this stuff? Yes, I believe it. Okay, we're going to confirm you as a Methodist. Alcoholics Anonymous does not do that. We do not demand anything. We do not demand that you have certain precepts about anything, right? You're going to be given the opportunity to take certain spiritual exercises that are going to put you in touch with this power. You're going to experience this power. And then you get to define it, and you get to put perspective around it and vocabulary and all that. And all that is well and fine. But we get to experience God. And today I experience God. I walked out on my front porch last night. And it was one of these nights where there's a moon up there and there's all these clouds passing in front of the moon. And it was just like amazing. And I've got chickens. The next door neighbors have chickens, and I've become friends with these chickens. Every time they see me, like 10 chickens run over just to say hi. I mean, I could go on and tell you all this amazing stuff. Here's the thing. Here's what I believe, and I'm going to end with this. I'm going to end with this story. All right, it's a spiritual story, and it comes from the book of Genesis, but I completely screw the story all around in my own way. Okay. Understand, I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. But anyway, I like this story. So Adam and Eve are running around in the Garden of Eden, right? They're naked. There's every kind of food in the world. They're just living large. And God comes and says, guys, I made this garden for you. I want you to have a great time, be fruitful, multiply, just have a blast. This is paradise. I made paradise for you, and it's all yours. I just have one request. And that request is, see that tree over there? That's the tree of self-consciousness. Don't eat that apple. I'm telling you, don't eat that apple. It's going to be bad if you do. Now, God goes away, and Adam and Eve come up with the idea, man, he's telling us not to do it. Maybe it's, maybe we'll be like him if we eat that apple, blah, 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 right? So they go over there and they eat of the apple. And the first thing that happens is now they're ashamed because they're standing there naked, so they're putting fig leaves and stuff on, and they got all this self-consciousness now. And, God shows up in the garden and they're like trying to hide from him. And, God finds them, and God's like, he knows right away what's going on, right? Goes, guys, did you eat from that apple? And they're like, oh, no. Yeah, he knows right away that they ate from that apple. So he goes, look, I love you enough. Obviously, you want self-determination. And with self-determination is going to come self-consciousness. Obviously, you want all this stuff. I'm going to give it to you. I'm absolutely going to give it to you. But you have to leave paradise. And you have to go east of Eden to the land of Nod. So Adam and Eve now have to go to the land of Nod. Anybody in here been in the land of Nod? I mean, I lived in the land of Nod. Now, here's the thing. We can get back into paradise. We can get back into paradise. We just have to turn over. We got to turn over that toxic experience of self at the door. And we got to take these simple spiritual steps that bring us to God consciousness. And then we can get back into paradise. I'm in paradise right now. I really am. So I don't know, Steve, if that's the kind of thing you wanted me to do or not, but that's what you got. Anyway, thank you everybody for hanging in there.